Welcome back to the Future Self podcast. Welcome to season 4, episode 2. Another episode in Bali, filming international with a fucking awesome guest that I can't wait to get into this with. This guest is someone who has absolutely taken over the social media space. I'm sure even if you don't follow him online, you would have seen all of his stuff. I can't wait to get into some of the topics. So today it's going to be with Alfie. So welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to start off this episode with something a little bit different. So a lot of the time when people start a podcast, it can be a little bit, nervous or conversation takes a minute. This for me, I've learned to just be a conversation breaker straight away. So it's going to be 10 rapid fire questions. Don't think about it too long. Don't stress about your answer. Just try and go on the roll, okay? Number 1, never lift weights or never run again.
Never run again.
Number 2, never post on the gram again or move away from Bondi.
Move away from Bondi.
Number 3, go vegan or add in packet foods.
Go vegan. Try everything once.
Number 4, only ever run 3 kilometre stints or 20 kilometres, nothing else.
3 kilometres.
Number 5, understand food, exercise, or the brain better.
Food and exercise helps the brain.
Number 6, always come up short or always end up overdoing.
Overdoing.
Number 7, alter your life/priorities now for a partner or stay single long term.
How long term? I can't answer. I think long term, yeah.
Okay. Number 8, persuade more people to eat clean or to exercise.
Eat clean.
Number 9, meet Wim Hof, Andrew Huberman, David Goggins, or Liver King.
Andrew Huberman.
Number 10, do you fear injury, sickness, or fatigue most?
Sickness.
Number 11, long answer. Who is Alfiegetshard and why are you living the life you live?
Alfiegetshard is extension of Alfie, myself. Started off as a 75-day hard challenge from Andy Frisell as I sort of returned back last year in September from a big trip away. So I lived in Bali for 2 months, was in Europe for a long time, was by all means doing well. I was working at a climate tech startup over in Singapore, working remotely with a really good friend from university. We scaled from 4 to 50 people in the space of 18 months. And if anyone was looking from the outside, it looked like my life was incredibly successful and I was doing really well. I was head of carbon markets at the time, so I had a very senior role in the company. But I felt like I wasn't on the trajectory I wanted to be. I felt like I was out there sort of celebrating without having anything behind me or like to really celebrate. And that was a big part of the drinking, which I'm sure we'll get into. So I think the 75-day hard challenge was a great opportunity for me to reset for 75 days and really lock in and not drink for that period. I'd never managed to stay away from alcohol for that long. Never been an issue, not a particularly addictive personality per se, but I think the use of alcohol, you go through school, drinking a lot then, New Zealand and Australia have an incredible binge drinking culture, and I think it's very ingrained in school. It's sort of the done thing, and being able to consume huge volumes of alcohol is definitely celebrated in our society as well. And then going into work, worked a corporate job, started at Procter & Gamble, large FMCG company. And from there, it was, work drinks, and you get into that sort of habitual routine of week in, week out, you're living for the weekends. And don't get me wrong, incredibly fun. I would go out, incredibly social, I think naturally extroverted, and alcohol brought out all of the extremes of those qualities. And then moving into a more serious role and also a startup where it's, you need to be on all the time. I dabbled in not drinking for a little while, trained for a half marathon and stopped drinking for about 30 days then. but would always find myself going back to it. And I think there was almost this no reason not to, right? Because it was one of those things where it's like, well, I'm young, living in between that mindset of, do I sacrifice now for the future because I want to achieve all these things in my life and go the extra mile, or do I have fun? I'm young and like this is the time to be living it up. And I think that duality of popping in and out of those two different ways to approach life is very difficult, and it's easy to lock in for the weekday and then be a loose cannon on the weekend. So coming back, I think from Europe and from Bali, it really made me reassess where I wanted to be in the next 12 months. And I sort of saw the trajectory that I was on, probably staying in that role, continue working up, continue growing that company, maybe get a nice exit and sort of live this coasting, life's good, but it's not like phenomenal. It's not like amazing. And I think I could have just stayed on that trajectory and ended up in a pretty good place, but it wasn't going to be a great place. So that's when I decided to come back and do 75 hard, and that started Alfiegetshard, which is obviously the play on of the 75-day hard challenge. I've kept the name because I think it's a unique name, but I think it's appropriate as well to sort of the way that I'm living my lifestyle at the moment. As that sort of built over the time, I then realized the opportunities that led, and I think my message resonating with such a wide audience really made me switch on to the idea that there's something more here, and if I can inspire just one person, I think that's living out that mission.
Did you have a moment where you experienced calling out your own shit, or was it a slow on-flow effect of I'll take the drinking out, then I'll try 75 hard, then I'll do this, then I'll do that? Or did you have a defiant moment where it was reflecting, I've got to cut the shit, I have to stop doing this, I need to make change?
I think there's always a point, particularly with drinking, right? I don't think anyone who drinks regularly could say they never regret anything they've done while they're drinking. So there were a couple times where I think I caught myself and was like, was that the right thing to be doing? Like definitely anxiety, you wake up and you're like, oh, did I really do that? And then you just slowly throughout the day remember more and more things that you did from the night before. And then just when you think it's all over, a friend goes, do you remember that? Or they get up their phone, they're like, this was you. And you're like, fuck. There wasn't like a specific incident that comes to mind. I think there's just like an accumulation of times where I was like, okay, that's probably not the best. And again, like I was fortunate to never get to a point where like there was ever a big intervention or friends or family sitting me down to that point, which is good. I'm happy I didn't get there. And I think I still have that relationship now where I can see the value in alcohol from like a higher level of, I understand it's like incredibly fun, takes the edge off for people get to go out, they dance, they have fun, and there's a lot of enjoyment there as well. So no particular moment, it was more an accumulation of it adding up, and then I think a frustration of where I wasn't, and looking back and being like, okay, well, if I was to reverse engineer where I want to get to and the type of person I want to be, what would those habits look like? And I just couldn't include drinking in that, at least for this part of my journey.
Yeah, that reverse engineering is actually a really good reflection, because a lot of people can get stuck on what to do next or what their next step is, because they overwhelm the idea of needing to do A, B, C, X, Y, and Z. But if you just start with one of them, it can on-flow a change onto the next and then onto the next naturally. Did you have a moment when you were doing 75 hard, or when you were starting to build your personal public brand, where you thought, shit, this is actually something, I can be something influential in this space, I can impact lives? Was there a moment with that, or was it someone telling you, or like what was the experience of that?
Yeah, I think the actual starting of the account was half accountability, half I think, I was living at the time with Jake, who's a Leicester boy online, and he'd already accumulated a pretty big following at that point, around 250,000 followers. And I think seeing, particularly when I was living in Bali, sort of the access to people and the network that granted him, right or wrong, but we're living in Bali, hanging out with, we ended up with like J.R. Rez and like Koa Smith, some of these like world-class surfers and like influencers and people like that, and they gave us the time of day because of Jake's following. And I think that really like opened my eyes to be like, oh wow, okay, there's like some value here, and there's like a real social currency behind it. So I think in some realms yes, it started out because I like saw that opportunity, but it mainly was just accountability. I was like, all right, well, if I have to post every day, included in all the list of things that you do for 75 hard, then that's a great way to hold myself accountable. So it was also like a fresh account, a new start, just me sort of checking in daily and being like, here's what I did today, I showed up. So first for myself, but obviously I put it on public. So I think there was division and, I was putting hashtags on the post. It wasn't like it was some sort of accident.
Yeah.
I also think then it was incredibly quick from not necessarily the growth. Like it took me about 45 days to really start taking off, and we can get into that. But I think it was incredibly quick how quickly the message resonated with people. Like even within friends that I hadn't talked to in a while, things like that. Like I got all these, messages like, oh, I'm day X of 75 hard, or I did it last year, it was really good, or 3 other people jumped on and joined me with it and actually created accounts as well. I think they fell off, but just the idea of like me putting myself out there and being like, this is what I'm doing 75 days of like self-improvement, physical and mental, and this is what I'm going to stand by for the next 75 days. I think the courage, not that I like saw it as like this big movement at the time, but I think just the courage to put yourself out there. You never know how people are going to like react to that. And generally I think if you put yourself out in a vulnerable state, people are going to react pretty positively. I think they appreciate the vulnerability.
Yeah, so in the sense of blowing up on social media and gaining a very intense volume of following, what's the focus of positivity versus negativity that you've experienced with what you do?
I think social media is a pretty interesting beast where the way the algorithm rewards content is a lot around that comment and engagement. And the algorithm doesn't comb through and go, oh, this was a negative comment, therefore like let's reduce the reach of this post. Like you actually find that the posts that do the best out there, and you see it all the time, are incredibly polarizing, often quite controversial. Look at like Andrew Tate, look at Jordan Peterson, like all of these examples of people that have gone out there and said a very definitive statement that puts them on one side of the camp. And with that, you obviously get all the people that agree with that, who would react positively, but you also get the wave of people that would react negatively. And then you get the positive people commenting to the negative people, and you suddenly have this debate going on. And a debate going on in the comment section is like fuel to the fire in terms of like algorithm and growth, all those things. Specifically with my content, it's been overwhelmingly positive. And I think that comes back to one, trying to deliver as much value for the audience as possible. I think even knowing how the algorithm works, it's like, okay, yes, you can say something that's sort of polarizing or may turn a few heads, but you need to back it up and you need to make it actionable and have some benefit for people. And I think that's the longevity piece. I think people can come out and make all these brash statements, but they're not going to be around for long, because when you put those statements to the fire, they're just going to melt over time. Like if they're not evidence backed, if people aren't seeing a positive change in their life from following advice, they're not going to come back and repeatedly do that.
How do you then balance going all in compared to being half-half? So for instance, I'm a massive anti-alcohol advocate. It's something that I don't see a point in for a lot of people in a positive way. It does have its value or its position, but that comes at a cost. You can't drink alcohol, from my perspective, without there being a cost. And sometimes the cost is worth the expense. Sometimes it's not. The way you are with food and with training and with lifestyle, how do you monitor or manage the clashback or the idea of being all in? So for instance, I'm, like I said, against alcohol, but there'll be times where I might think, I want to drink with a friend, or, I'm in a different country, I might want to party, but I feel that accountability held from myself and also the brand that I've created to not go down that route, or almost this external pressure that you shouldn't be doing that. Do you ever feel like that with the food, with the training, with the running, that you're held to a higher standard than what you want to be truthfully?
I think they're all so fundamental, like training, eating clean. I think like if the cameras weren't on, I'd be doing the same thing. And I think that's probably why the message resonated so quickly is, although I've been on social media since September, it's like I've been doing this for 10 years and like have loved it. I haven't always eaten as clean, like I went through, and I haven't always trained this way, but I've been training like solidly for 10 years. Like started off in rugby, continued in uni, and then just like loved the gym. And like Jake and I met in the gym. We like just, I think he was the first person I saw that was training harder than me in the gym, and I was like, I love that.
Yeah.
And went in, had a chat to him, had a few mutuals from New Zealand, and we just like kicked it off since then. And I think those parts are just so integral. Like even, yeah, obviously like I film a lot of the workouts, I film a lot of the food I eat and do all those things, but like I would be doing them regardless. And there's plenty of ones that I don't film and don't put up, and I'm still out there doing it. I think those are super integral, so I think the standard was always there. Like it's so past motivation now. I think if you go and do those things for long enough, it's not like, oh, I need to be motivated to go to the gym. It's more like, if I don't go to the gym, I'll go insane. Like you need to get that energy out because you've just built that habit for so long.
So it's so interesting that people that do what a lot of others don't do, that should do or could do. So for instance, eat clean, train, exercise, doing the action itself isn't that hard. But the idea for so many people to comprehend or just take that first step is very difficult. It's not that hard to go for a walk in the morning, but the idea can be so taxing for some people that they don't then do it. And you just were expressing the development from motivation to discipline, or it becoming who you are, is just a compound of consistently doing it. What's your advice though for someone that understands that but just isn't doing it? Because it's easy to say, right, just go for a walk. But for some people, there's so much friction there. So what's your advice on transitioning it to be motivation into who you are?
Yeah, I think humans are incredibly malleable and like we adapt, and that's how we survive and like have survived, like evolutionary, like got to the point that we are. So I think whatever stimulus we throw continuously at our body, we find a way to overcome it. And I think that's what's super unique about humans, is we have this incredibly ability to thrive in nearly any environment that we're thrown into. My biggest advice to someone who's in that rut and like can't even, I don't know, let's say it's going for a walk as like the minimum. I think for a lot of people, they'll be like, oh, well, of course I can go for a walk in the morning. But there are some people who are at that point where the baseline is set so low for exercise that going for a walk even feels incomprehensible, and like consecutive days in a row would be very difficult. I would say break the step down even further. It's like, okay, this morning you just need to get out of bed this morning. And then from there, you just need to walk 10 meters. Like, and that just sounds so like laughable that well, of course I can walk 10 meters. But it's like, by the time you're out the door walking 10 meters, it's like, why wouldn't you just go for another 100? Then it's 200, then it's a kilometer, then it's 5 kilometers, then you've hit your 10,000 steps. And that's just like the combination of small wins. I think if you can chunk a task down, no matter how big and like ominous it feels, if you can make it so ridiculously small that you can at least take the first step towards it, you'll have a way better chance of hitting it.
Your network in Bondi is, from what I can see on an outside perspective, fucking insane. Like the friends you have around you, the similarities between values and principles that you all share is really amazing. Has that come from weeding out those you didn't align with? Has that come from you being inspiring enough to bring individuals up? So, for instance, the people that you had as friends when you were partying and corporate, they wouldn't have the same values necessarily as what you do now. What have you done with those individuals? Have you tried to encourage them to live your life? Have you slowly just distanced yourself? Like, what's the experience of that?
Yeah, I think drinking definitely plays into the way that you cultivate your friend group. I've got a huge belief, and like I feel like and it's almost common knowledge now, that you really are the 5 people that you surround yourself with. I think our friendship group, we were fortunate. Like a lot of those friends are New Zealanders from school that I grew up with, and I think people who came from New Zealand and moved to Sydney moved because maybe they didn't resonate with some of the things in New Zealand, or they wanted more than just staying in New Zealand, which is sort of like small town Australia vibes. Like that's just the perspective that I always throw on it, because I think similar is that you see those people coming in, and we actually get on really well with a lot of people from rural Australia who come from those smaller towns like in New South Wales or Queensland and all of that, and come to Sydney, come to a big city where there's opportunity, and they're going to like greener pastures and want to go to like the big smoke to go and seize that opportunity. That's essentially what I think the decision-making tree that a lot of people go through, same for New Zealand, going to Sydney. So I think once you've set that, it almost like creates this mesh where the people that actually end up in Sydney already have that sort of mindset. And from there, it was just, I think, a natural orientation to assimilating into your environment. Bondi is incredibly wellness focused. It's incredibly health focused. Like you've got this classic, trade-off between Melbourne's got the nightlife and Sydney's really got the morning life. The busiest time, 6 a.m. down at Bondi, there's salties going on, people in the water, there's MRFs of 100, 200 people, there's run clubs, there's so much going on in the morning, and people come to Bondi and they end up way fitter than before. So obviously still a bit of nightlife, but it's an early nightlife because of lockout laws. We've cultivated this in bed by midnight is like a late night. 1 a.m., 2 a.m. is a late night. Whereas, you go to somewhere like Melbourne and you've got like Revs or Revolution, whatever it's called, and you're like out until 5, 6, 7, 8. Of course you're not getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning, you're getting home then. So I think if you put yourself in an environment where, one, people are in bed early, you've got beautiful beaches and oceans and outdoors, and you've got that access to the environment and like nature and facilities that, you don't really have anywhere else in the world. Like Sydney's so unique in that you have almost like this coastal, beautiful beach that's like second to none to most places in the world, but you've also got like a thriving finance corporate capital there as well. So I think you get this beautiful mash of hustle and bustle culture that comes out of the city mixed with like this surf, health, lifestyle. Like people move there for the lifestyle and they don't make a huge sacrifice on their money as well.
Yeah, I've just spent the last 9 weeks traveling Europe, and I'm a bed at 7 p.m, up at 3 or 4 a.m. type individual. And when I was in Europe, people weren't starting to do things until 9 p.m, 10 p.m. And then I'd ask a few people, when would you start clubbing? And they wouldn't go out till 1 or 2 a.m. as the start, which is such an interesting thought. I always find the thought of the reality you have isn't actually reality. It's what you create it to be. So that's why location depression is a really interesting thing, because you just expressed so much gratitude for Sydney. And I'm from the Sydney region, but I fucking hated it when I was leaving. So I left in April. And my surrounding location, I felt a lot of friction with and a lot of displeasure, which would have led to location or experience-based depression, I'm sure. But adverse to that, your experience of it is so different because you've set yourself in somewhere that works. You've created relationships, you've created networks, and you came from New Zealand. What was the experience actually like in New Zealand? Was it as good? Was it as positive? Or did you leave there to find this positivity here?
So I left New Zealand when I was 17, finished high school when I was 17 and came over for university.
Okay.
So I think it was a decision in New Zealand. You've got Dunedin, Wellington, Dunedin, Christchurch, Wellington and Auckland. So you've got 4 major cities that you can go to university. For like Auckland, I'd grown up there. I lived on a small little island called Waiheke, which is off the coast of Auckland. And it was sort of like, you feel like you've done it at that point. Auckland's 1 million people, biggest city in New Zealand, but it gets pretty small pretty quick. Like all the schools know each other. You just feel like you've been there long enough. So I didn't really want to stay in Auckland. Christchurch is super cold. Dunedin's super cold as well, and it's a super big party university, and people go down there and it's like proper breathers. You throw like, I don't know if you've heard of Dunedin, but they light couches on fire. It's like
madness.
It is actually madness, and I'm sure it's a lot of fun, but you are like probably thrown. Like people go down there and a 3-year commerce degree takes like 5 years sort of thing. It's that vibe, and that's like the standard. So I didn't really want to go there. Lots of friends from school went to Wellington, which is the capital. Again, it's just like a windy city. Like there was nothing. It's very similar to Canberra, I think, that sort of vibe. So it didn't attract me massively. And I sort of knew I wanted to go overseas, and I was very fortunate that two who are still really good friends to date also were looking at Sydney, and we all sort of applied, same uni, same college, and got into the same spot. And I think that was a huge moment where we separated a little bit from our existing friend group, and the two guys that I went with are like incredibly switched on, great humans. One of them works at like a high frequency trading firm, did aerospace engineering, as a fucking genius. And I just spent some time in Greece with him, which was awesome to catch up. He'll do amazing things. And the other one, civil engineer, super switched on. He's like always been my moral compass. So I think heading over with two really good mates that wanted more out of life, like just set this bar for like, okay, we're gonna go here, we're new, let's just see what we can do, and let's just like really seize it. I think if you are fortunate enough to pick your environment, then you're going to love it so much more because you're so grateful for all the reasons that you picked it. So you're almost like, you've got this self-justifying bias of I'm here for the right reasons, whereas it's very hard to probably appreciate that if you've grown up in Sydney your whole life because you just don't see that.
That's very fair. So do you think you'd be who you are now without Bondi?
That's a very good question. I do really believe you're a product of your environment. So I'd say I'd be quite different. Again, I think the fitness just really resonated with that, and that like brought that up to an extreme. Like the funny thing about Bondi is you go around and it's like, I'm not some like anomaly that like everyone is jacked, everyone is ripped, everyone's running marathons. Like people are running like ultra marathons, people are doing like ultra mirths, which is like a marathon, 1,000 pull-ups, 2,000 push-ups, 3,000 bodyweight squats, and a marathon in a day. Took him like 22 hours, like that.
Jesus
Yeah, he's a beast, ab stacker. He's one of the trainers at the local gym. But I think that the benchmark is set so high for physical performance. Like it's like, oh, I just ran like an ultra 50K. Like that's like not even raise an eyebrow. Like that is sort of the standard. And I think having now been fortunate to travel a bit and go to other like fitness and wellness capitals of the world, like LA, for example. Biggest difference between LA and Bondi. LA, people walk around, you're like, oh, you're jacked, you're in good shape. It's like, okay, movie star, they're a model, they're a fitness influencer. Whereas Bondi, it's like, oh, you're jacked. It's like, oh yeah, local accountant. Like that is just like the bar that's set in Bondi.
Yeah, that's such an interesting contrast. Yeah, that those same individuals in a different position are something such as the movie star, and then it's a local thing. Where would you be if you had to move away from Bondi now? Where would you move to, and why?
Yeah, I think if I was going to go away, I'd probably go to the States. I really enjoyed my time in Austin. We caught up with the Raw Dog boys, like Noah, Ian, Tin, and Darren, and they were just so lovely, really looked after us, really made us feel very at home, and they've built such an awesome community down there. And I think they've cultivated this very interesting lifestyle. It's like a Texas spin on wellness. You know, they're like, I don't know, they do like microdosing, carry around Glocks, and I'm like, this is so different, but it's sort of cool. They're really lovely guys, and I love the vision that they've got and what they're building and what they stand for. So I think that would be a really cool place. I think I resonate with like a lot of the people there and what they're building, and they've just built an epic friend group that I think resembles a lot of what we have in Bondi. So probably Austin. Second that would be potentially New York. Really enjoyed our time there. We were there for just a week, and I think probably having a week in New York versus living there is a very different experience. But a week there was awesome. We went to a whole bunch of gyms and just felt very welcomed there, had a great time. So I think anywhere where there's a network of people that are just looking to like improve themselves and step up their game. Bali's maybe on the cards. I have lived here before. There are parts of Bali that I love, like Uluwatu, I enjoy, and things like that. The only problem with Bali is running here. I'm currently like 8 weeks away from Sydney Marathon, doing like 60 to 80 kilometre weeks at the moment, and running here sucks. Like, if you don't go early in the morning, one, it's super hot, which I don't mind running in the heat, but like dogs, the hills are horrendous, and just no footpath infrastructure. Like they've just skipped that. And I think that's the real struggle with some of these developing countries is you have so much money flowing in to everything on each side of the road, but no one, it's like, it's that whole thing of like beautiful driveways, shit roads. And it's just like, because typically in like a developed society, taxes and money go up to the top and then get redistributed back down to like a suburb level where you can fix up and put that infrastructure in, like great roads, footpaths, bike paths. But here it just goes up, what little tax goes up, and it stays up and gets distributed between a couple of people.
Just to give some credit for a moment, you are very humble and very approachable and very intellectual too. So a lot of individuals, when they have a big following, they kind of set themselves at a standard where if you're not also with a big following, you kind of can't communicate or talk to that level of individual. And all it took for me was to just shoot a message, and you were super responsive, interested, and keen, which was different to what I initially expected, because you have blown up. You are very well known, Sydney region. You are killing it, hardworking. I'm sure you're busy as fuck as well. So yeah, just some credit to you, because you're very humble, but also just very comforting in a sense to talk to. You're very welcoming, which is a really admirable trait. What do you think the perception of you is different to who you truly are?
Well, first off, thank you. It's very nice. I think any influencer out there that thinks they're above someone who's got less followers than them should humble themselves. It's not that hard to gain followers. Like, in the sense, like, I think if you're putting a positive message out there and doing the right thing, people are going to draw to you. And I think that old saying of like, great power comes great responsibility. I really think like, if you're going to put a message out there, you need to stay true to that on and off the camera. And if you're not going to, don't put the message out there. I think the perception of Alfiegetshard is probably a lot of people would assume I was a PT before, and that I've come from like a personal training background, and I've just run around with my shirt off. I'm just like a relatively good looking bloke with a good body, and that's sort of like where it ends. And I've sort of dialed into the fitness and like understand that, and that's what I specialize in, and quite like one dimensional. And I think like if you get to know me and like have a conversation, like a lot of my passions lie outside of fitness. And I think fitness I've leveraged to give myself an audience, and it's something that I've like clearly dialed in and have a level of expertise in and see myself as relatively competent. But I think the competence in it, like I was never like a naturally born athlete or like natural at really anything. I just worked incredibly hard and was disciplined enough to stick with it. Like I remember final year of high school, I knew that I wanted to go to Sydney, and the only way I was going to get there was on a scholarship. So I played rugby at the time, but wasn't good enough to get a scholarship on that. So I just locked in with my academics and ended up duxing my school. So I got first place in school. And that's like, I think I always knew that like I was smart enough to do it, but I definitely didn't have my grades there. And until I like locked in, applied myself, and was disciplined enough just to put in the work and then got there, I was like, I wonder what else I can do. And that sort of, I think, honestly, that point really hit like a bit of a chain reaction for me to be like, if you actually apply yourself and focus, you can be so much more. So yeah, I think from face value on camera, it's very easy, like particularly because I don't do too much piece to camera, although I'm gonna start doing more and more long format where I think people will start to see that other side. But in short format, you've got like 15 seconds, probably with music, probably me like running around with my top off. They just be like, here's this guy living this great life. Like he's probably just like trust fund, born into this. So it's like never taking a handout, scholarships through university, worked all the way like through university, worked so many different jobs, like worked since I was 15 in a bar in New Zealand where I grew up, a little vineyard called Stony Ridge. Like literally have worked from day dot and earned all of my stripes along the way and still do that as well. And my biggest thing is like now I've been given the opportunity and platform to one, help others, but also provide to others as well. Like I give so much back to all those around me. I've got a really strong perspective that from a societal level and like the way that you approach broadly, you should be a capitalist. Like we've got to understand that we live in a capitalist world where, you know, money speaks volumes and like we need to earn for money, and that can be leveraged to buy back time and the things that you love and look after the people you care about. But for friends, like I'm a socialist. Like I always want to give back to that like close inner circle, and I'm a huge believer in give way more than you take, because and give way more than you take and expect nothing in return. But trust me, you'll get a lot in return, but you've got to go in with the expectation of nothing in return.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because you can indirectly give more without the expectation of more coming back, but by doing that, you do solidify that more does come back in time. As a moment of like relatability, what are some of the stresses and struggles you have in your life? So for instance, from where I am from with Wollongong, a lot of people think with the mindset work that I do and the coaching work I do, I don't have any, stresses or struggles, or I don't have any things that I deal with. And they hold you not to a godlike standard, but a standard that takes the human away from you. Where if I'm going through a struggle, someone be like, oh, it's a guy, he'll get through it. But in my mind, I'm like, no, I'm still a young individual that this is going to be something that will be hard to get through, but I will get through it. What are some of the stresses and struggles in your life that you manage just on a day-to-day, whether they're big or small? You share what you want to share.
I think just the quantity of work and how busy we are. I think it's very easy because of the way social media works. It's a continuous highlight reel. And I think people will just look into that and go, oh, like the comment I get all the time is like, trust fund kid. It doesn't really, like, honestly, at this point, I'm like, I don't really care. But I think people forget that it's like, websites don't come out of nowhere. Email marketing doesn't go out of nowhere. Like, this content doesn't just like form itself. Like, the stories and the content, like I post twice a day, reels. It's like, if you go and try and make a reel, see how long it takes you. And like, particularly if you're creating like viral reels that have been curated with the right audio, the right hooks, the right messaging, and then take a step back and be like, okay, on top of the content, which is like the marketing plug on to your business, all of the back end. So like all the finance, all of the admin behind that, ensuring that like cash flow is coming in. We've now got like pretty much full-time content team. We've got a sales team, got a full-time partnership manager, balancing those different components, and then also looking at like, okay, what does the next 6 months look like? Like, how are we going to actually grow this? Like, we're just getting started here. And I think like juggling all of that, people probably discount and go, oh, you just run around and like with your top off and people film you and then you chuck it on Instagram. That's sick. And it's like, it is. The lifestyle is epic, don't get me wrong. And the lifestyle of like being able to earn from anywhere in the world and earn from my phone is like incredible and such a unique opportunity. But there's a lot of work that goes behind it. So I think just balancing that where people probably don't see all of the work, because that's my job, is to show you that it looks like this is not a lot of work. And so I guess I'm doing my job right. If you're watching, and you feel like this is just like an overnight success, or you feel like these videos are just like effortless to make and they just pop up, then I'm doing my job right.
Yeah, it's also the work to get there. Because for instance, I'll have some individuals make comments, oh, life's so hard for you, you live in Bali, you just train and you do a bit of coaching each day. But it's like, well, yeah, but don't forget that I worked 7 days a week for 3 years straight, doing 80-hour weeks to be able to allow for that. So it's that idea of, people will always try and take away from you without the understanding and idea of what you've put in behind the scenes too. Because even if posting a reel was simple, it's the idea that you chose to do the hard work of 75 hard, of take the risk of leaving your job, of cultivating a community, of putting yourself out there. Yes, it's different to the hard work of what our grandparents were doing, maybe shoveling shit or fucking picking things up, but it's still hard work in a different sense. What are the things that you are competitive with Jake, and what are the things that you help each other with? So I'll link your account and his account down below, but if you follow one, you know the other, and you guys fucking kill it together. You have a very similar friendship to me and my mate Max. It's just that very ride or die sense where some people might look at it in weird lights or that it's fake or staged, but I know what a truthful friendship like that is, or I can relate to that. But what are some of the things that you compete with him, and what are some of the things that you need each other to help each other with?
I think we're so fortunate, Jake and I, that we are super different.
Okay.
But where we meet in the middle is the discipline. So the way I describe Jake to everyone, it's my favorite way to describe him, is he's a man of uncompromising discipline. And that's both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. And I use those words very selectively when I say, a man of uncompromising discipline. Because I think discipline is the super positive side. And like discipline is what allows you to stay consistent and push through no matter the situation and environment. But the compromise and not being able to compromise is like the slight negative side. And Jake's such a great and unique and interesting human, and I absolutely love having him in my life. And he's always pushed me, I think, from a competitive standpoint, from training, from nutrition, from just trying to squeeze every last bit, whether that's the final rep, whether that's understanding like more principles behind the nutrition. Like his ability to focus and dial into a very specific topic is super unique, and I think that makes him incredibly good at what he does. So he's such an extremist in that manner, and you look at his mobility and how mobile he is. Like a lot of people go, oh, he's hypermobile from it. Like you do not get that mobile.
Yeah.
Even if you've got a good base, you do not get that mobile without doing it every day. Every morning, without fail, he is out there stretching. Like he stretches and mobilizes so much, and he trains fucking hard as well. Like he's a big guy. He's solid. And if you meet him in person, everyone says, you're bigger in person. Like he's bigger than me.
Just interject that quickly, actually. Most influencers I do meet, they are proportionately smaller in person. And when I seen you two boys training at Obsidian, it was one of the first times I was like, fucking hell, you look bigger or better in person than on social media, which is such a rare situation to happen. So like, yeah, credit to you guys for that. Because I was like, fucking hell, it's either looks directly the same as what's posted or, yeah, bigger in person, which was super interesting.
Well, I think you're a tall guy as well. And most people are like a lot shorter.
Yeah.
And like that is one thing about the camera. If you're like 5'10", you can look 6 foot on camera.
Fair.
And that catches up to you pretty quick when you're in person. But yeah, back to your point. So I think competitive-wise, definitely training. It's so funny. We had just a hilarious time. We're in Greece and we're traveling with James as well, good friend from New Zealand who we both know. And there was just this hilarious rivalry where we were all sort of running, but for some reason we could never sync our running times. And it was just like, oh, I just came back 15K this morning. Oh, you boys still in bed? Like, and it was just real like digging of each other. And then it always became a competition. So like when we were arriving, if you've been to Greece, you probably like hopped around a few of the islands there. And we would arrive on like a new island and it would always be, all right, who's staying with the bags? I'm going to run from the ferry to the place. It was like 15K, pitch black. It's like 10 p.m. But we just got into this like competitive lads sort of nature, which was great. And I think that will always be part of our relationship. Like if I know Jake's gone and trained and done like an extra session, it irks me. And it vice versa to him as well. I know it irks him as well. So I think there's that, which is great to be competitive on because he's always pushing me to like go harder, do more in the gym side. I think where I compliment him massively and probably where I push him is the business side, and he's very open on that as well. I think I was fortunate, my background's finance marketing. His background was more, he did web design, but he was working as a PT at the time. Like he's so dialed into that. I think that's sort of his focus and that's what he's great at. Whereas where I come in is more like the business and how we scale it. And that's why I think working together, we just have to play on our strengths. And we're still figuring out that relationship, like to be best mates, living together and working together. And we've got like business ventures together, like he's Coffee and Chill, which I'm sure we'll talk on. Obviously got Run Club. We've got Pure Body, which is like Pure Body Eats. We've also got Train Pure Body, which is like our high ticket group coaching. So to collaborate on all that stuff is epic because like the message, as you said, if you know one of us, you know the other, and the message just like starts combined, and I think that's really compounding. But it's a lot. Like, and we've just been traveling 6-7 weeks where I reckon this is the limit, like, and it's good because we're the bigger group at the moment. But there's definitely like there's times like any relationship where you're just like, you've seen someone so much and you're just like, I need some space. Yeah,
that's where it kind of, at least I'll speak from my experience, where it becomes like a brother type relationship.
Exactly.
Like if you had a brother, you'd tell him to get fucked and not talk to them for half a week, and then you're back like best mates the next day. We'll go into then, obviously, what you're doing at the moment. But a curious question I had is I do one-to-one. So a lot of the work I do is one-to-one. I have a subscription too. So that's where I can give a certain amount to people but not be in the mix of it because my time is of demand. So I don't have a lot to put into that. Why not the route of one-to-one? Like, why did you go into you do monthly challenges? Is that the biggest bulk of what your business is, the monthly subscription?
Yeah, so that and like 12-week programs
Yeah.
are the bulk. Reason being so the one-on-one, exactly as you said, is like the time constraint. I do take on a couple select like high ticket clients that I've worked with for a little while and just monthly, but I've tried to roll that down and we've now moved into a group one-on-one. So Jake and I have launched Train Pure Body, which is essentially a group one-on-one coaching where people get direct access to our time. So they sign on for 90 days and we put them on the Pure Body program. And that's basically all of our principles across training, nutrition, and lifestyle. And training's obviously everything that we do in the gym. It's knowing like exactly what to do when you go in there, and really speaks to our philosophy around this full body training style, but also the mobility style. So you get daily mobility from Jake as well. Nutrition's what we're doing in the kitchen, how we're eating, how we're fueling our body and allowing it to recover. Obviously, eating real food and single ingredient is a huge component of that. And lastly is the lifestyle component, so how you remain consistent in the first two. And what we've found is like just having one of those, you're going to fall off across the 90 days. Like you're not going to get the results you want if just your training's dialed in or just your nutrition or just the lifestyle component, which is very rare, but what you need is a combination of all three. So we've tried to create a structure that allows people to be held accountable at the highest level. And then they've got access to our time, which is obviously limited, but we do put like a direct messaging line in there. And then we do fortnightly group calls where we essentially take a seminar and it's like a high level topic, and then we do a deep dive really down into like the training philosophy and why they're training away. So at the end of the 90 days, our goal is actually not to see the client again for 90 days. It's like, could we distill enough value in here that someone could take this away and it could change the way that they approach their training, nutrition, and lifestyle. And that's been super successful so far. We've had some really good applications. We sort of go through and we do vet it a little bit because we want people that are really committed and are going to see it out for the 90 days. But there's been some awesome people that we work with, and it's all like really high ticket, like C-suite, like executives, people that are out there doing shit and normally killing it in the business side. I mean, that's sort of siloed from like the price point is higher.
Yeah.
But with that, you get these awesome people. One, it grows our network, which is super important and we love doing, but also these people that have really nailed that aspect, and you see that level of discipline and focus. And when you suddenly just guide them in the right direction, they can sort of switch that discipline that they've already ingrained in another facet of their life and just apply it to fitness.
Who's your ideal clientele?
It's normally 25 to 35. That seems to be like in the early 30s range. Someone who's normally prioritized work for a long time and is still in that sort of like not grind set, but they prioritize work to a point where they're like, okay, they're at a place now monetarily and they fixed all their money problems. I've always said money fixes money problems. And it's like money problems are sort of out the window, but they're like, shit, I'm gonna have enough money now to live a pretty epic life, and if my health isn't in check, I'm just like shortcutting not only the life from a perspective of living for less time, but also living well for less time. So our whole philosophy is like, we want you stronger for longer, and we want you to feel better for longer. So it's not just longevity to like live to an old age, it's vitality. It's like how functional you are in your old age as well. And I think people who have been really successful in business are like coining onto this now. And we work with some awesome clients, even some like proper multi-billionaire clients that, we've noticed through that network. Billionaires are really big into biohacking, and they should be. They're the ones that they've got enough money that they're going to be around for a long time, and they need to have a body that's functioning. And there is a drop-off between how many supplements, how many cell replacements, like you have to do the work at some point. And like at the very bottom of those tables of like vitality and longevity is getting your sleep, it's eating right, it's doing the right training, it's like weight training into an old age. And I just feel like no matter how many supplements or pills or money you solve at the problem, at the end of the day, you've got to do that level of work. And that's who we love working with, is people that are like ready to take action and just actually make something happen over the 90 days, but also set them up in a way that it's so beyond the 90 days. It's like we're looking like well into the future and about extending those like golden years on their life.
If you could change one task in your life and have a natural dopamine injection from that, what would you choose that to be?
Oh, I feel like there's so many good answers to this question if I had prepared. But I feel like the easy one that I'm just, because it's like end of financial year coming, it'd be bookkeeping. If I just got like a crazy dopamine rush every time my accounts were like perfectly balanced and I'd like put all my expenses in and had all the receipts in the right place, that would be epic.
Yeah,
My business would be seamless and the ATO, not that they should be on my back, but would be so smooth. If I come up with a better answer, I will think of it because I feel like there's got to be something good around that. It's a great question.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Another one that I thought of is, are you more anti-packet, man-made sugars or alcohol? Like what one for you creates the most friction when advocating or inspiring people to change?
I think anti-packet and sugar, because alcohol, you could get it down to like a balanced approach. And I love the boys back in Bondi, like Sam, Cam and Seb, who are way more like balanced, I guess, in that and being like, we can go. Like Sam Cam, shout out to you. He's in my room currently in Bondi, legend. And he put out the like a kilometer for every drink that he did. Yeah, 1 to 1. And I think that's like hilarious. And I think what people need to understand is the alcohol is not about the physical performance. Like I used to drink and I had a pretty good rig. Like I could keep it pretty in check because if you're drinking just once a week on a Friday or Saturday, like your body can probably get away with it. And as I said, like the body is incredibly malleable and it just adapts. Like I can guarantee the people that are drinking like twice, 3 times a week, the body just seems to adapt and be like, okay, you're chucking a whole load of poisons and toxins down me. I'll just, like your liver will be fucked, but I'll just adapt around it. And I think that difference, I think the alcohol is balanceable and like people can get away with it. Not recommending, not advocating for it, but I think you can get away with it. Whereas like packet food, that's what you're consuming all the time. And like that's going to make a huge difference, not just physically, but also how you feel. And that's my biggest thing. It's like calories for your weight, macros for your body composition, and then micros for your energy and mood. And I think once you understand those 3 principles, it stops being like, oh, it's just about calories, or it's just about macros, or it's just about micros. Like it's actually the combination of all 3. And just on that as well, because I think there's a bit of a clashback and a throw at the moment between like, oh, you just eat real food and just cover everything in honey. And like, I don't know, there's just like an extreme approach. It's just like, eat from real food, but you still need to understand like calories if you're trying to lose weight. Like if you're struggling to lose weight and you're eating real food, you're probably eating the wrong real food. Like that is possible as well. It's not just a world of like evergreen, you can have as much honey as you want in the world and you're still going to lose weight. Like things do still have calories. That's like thermodynamics of how the body works. Calories in, calories out. Like that principle still applies to everyone. It's like saying like, oh, gravity doesn't exist because I'm wearing these like specific shoes. It's like, no, it still exists. The thermodynamics are still there, but it makes it a hell of a lot easier if you're eating from real food because typically they are less dense in calories. And that's just like the principle that we sort of apply on is like, I don't think food should be weighed. I think it should be enjoyed with friends and family. That's why I don't track calories. But if you're really struggling to lose weight or you're really struggling to gain any muscle or weight and that's a desired outcome for you, track for a week. I think you'll just find that you've got no idea about serving sizes and portions. You'll be like, oh yeah, it's a portion of rice. And then like on the packet, that's like half a portion or that's 2 portions. So I think it's just like understanding portion size, do it for a week and that will set you up for life. It's more like an education thing and just using the principles of like, how can I get to the desired outcome with the least friction?
It's actually, I had a really good thought on what you were saying then. So the type of coaching I do is numerical based. It is tracking data. It is focusing on adherence with that and then making changes from that. Now, the depth of coaching I do is really different because a lot of the coaches I'm surrounded by will focus, if someone wants to lose weight, they will focus on doing the things needing to lose weight, versus the depth I take it to is, why did you put on weight in the first place, and why is there friction between where you're at and where you want to be? So I take coaching to a depth of, there's always reasons behind why we do things. So I'm working with someone now who is 20 kilos heavier than what they want to be. And they've worked with so many coaches. They've lost that 20, put it back on, lost that 20, put it back on. So the work I'm doing with them is identifying what it is, and we've identified that they don't have the self-respect or the self-care to adhere to something longer. So that's where that cycle keeps coming around. And what I like about the business you run and the things you do is the lack of claims. You have like a big showcase of, well, this is what I do and this is what works for me, but it's not do this necessarily and this will be the outcome. I feel like there is an easier level to have people to track food than there is for people to see success on eating whole food initially. So for someone like you could probably get to any body composition you want without weighing anything, because you know it. Same with me. I haven't tracked in 1 or 2 years, because if I want to lose weight, I know what to do. If I want to put on, I know what to do. But I always found that giving numbers initially is easier to get someone invested in the process than it is to have someone just eat real food, in the sense of not tracking. But that's why I like what you guys do, because it's not, eat this and this is specifically going to happen. It's just, if you eat better, you'll feel better. If you feel better, you'll move more. If you move more, your life's enhanced. And it's a very admirable way you go about things. If someone was to sign up with you or Jake, or sign up with Pure Body, what's the expectation on what levels of service, what complexities involved? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think at the highest level, which is our most personalized offer, which is the Pure Body group coaching, that's where you get direct access to Jake and I. And essentially we have fortnightly group calls, but you've also got a direct line to us on messaging. There we take into all of your personalization and the highest level of customization. So I think, as you were saying, for us, it's so much more than just, I want to train this, or I've got this access to a gym, or these are the foods I like. It's about what is your actual situation now? What are the habits that are keeping you from getting where you want to be? We go in with the assumption, obviously, if you're coming to us for coaching, you need coaching on a goal and where you want to be in the next 90 days. So we really focus on that. And that's when we're onboarding someone, and even prior to them jumping on the program, we're really pulling that out and being what is it, where do you actually want to be and why? What is the why for getting there? Because you'll find for a lot of people, it's not just about losing 20 kgs and stepping on. It's what that actually means in terms of, people know that being healthier is better for them. People know losing that weight is good, but they don't, know how to get there, but they also don't know. I think there's always a deeper why, and unpacking that is so important for us as well. Partly because that holds you accountable for the 90 days as well, because we can come in and chime in and remind you of that. It's losing weight has so many benefits beyond just looking a certain way. The energy derived from eating well, training often, getting your 10,000 steps a day, well hydrated, your sleep, doing those things is so life-changing. I can't even put it into words. They are the greatest things, and the ability to move pain-free in your body and to perform at a level of proficiency at something is the greatest gift that we could be given. It sounds so cliche, you've only got one body, respect it, but respecting your body and your mind is so important. Your brain is truly your greatest asset, and your body is the vessel that you get to function and experience everything in life with. And if you don't respect those two things, it's going to come back and, one, obviously be incredibly difficult later in life for you. But also, it's you're just not going to have as much of a fulfilling experience life if you don't get to do those things. So I think a great example I saw the other day, we were at Kling Kling Beach in Nusa Penida. Yeah. And it's a pretty steep down and up. I don't know if you went all the way to the beach. Yeah. And just looking around and seeing these people really, really struggle to go and do that. And obviously that's quite an extreme. Not everyone wants to hang on for dear life climbing down the cliff. But there's so many things in life, even the idea of picking up a child and being able to throw them above your head as a dad. The ability that you can't do that because you're overweight and you can't reach down, or your back's out, or your hamstrings are too tight, or whatever it is. that's such a restricting, horrible life on something that is so easy to fix. And it's not like, oh, fix this and you're like sacrificing everything else. It's like, fix this, it's then compounding to like your workplace. You've got more energy, you're more productive, you're more switched on, and you're generally happier. And like the happiest people are often the healthiest. And the reason being is they've just got more energy to give out, and that just brings energy back in. Like, I think that the biggest changes that our clients speak to us about is the way that they get treated. And I think that's an element of, they normally bubble it down to the aesthetic and being like, oh, I look better, so people are like more friendly and people can get, it's like, I don't think it's that, it's that you feel better and that you're putting more positive energy out there, and people are just resonating that. Like, I'm a huge believer in energy. I think life's energy, I think when we met for the first time, there was just a good energy. And you're, not to get too spiritual, like, I just think having that energy and that aura around you is so real, and that only becomes from like really respecting your mind and body.
I have the same desired outcome, but the way I go about it is so different. So yours is a showcase of actions and changing what you do. The way I educate my clientele is through self-questioning and reflection. Like, why did I do that? Or why did it make me feel that way? And slowly developing, again, the same outcome being self-respect on your end, self-respect on my end. There's so many different ways to go about it. When we first met, I made a comment of how cool life is because, dude, you're in Bali, you're training, you're doing a podcast now. Like, I remember the first time I came here in April, I filmed a podcast, left, got on a plane, and then went to Europe. And I was like, this is the life I want to live. Like, this is so cool. So it was really cool to, catch up, see what you're doing and the lifestyle you're living. When you go back home, though, because you're leaving back for Australia today, what do you go back home to? What are you working on? What's the focus? What will you dive into?
I'll jump into that and say, one of the things I'd say is the greatest gift that anyone can instill in like a child, or if you're building a character that is going to go and achieve great things, is like learning delayed gratification. I think like the ability to sacrifice in the short term and not see it as a sacrifice and see it as an investment that is going to pay dividends to your future self is so incredibly important. And I think I learned that very early on just from studying and then sacrificing, maybe not going out as much, maybe not socializing as much, like really making the most of that time. And then delayed gratification, end of year, got the results back, ducks the class, managed to get that scholarship, managed to go overseas, and it just triggered these events. And I was like, okay, if I work now, I'll be rewarded later. And I think it's just like that boils down, if I could instill that in anyone, I think it's just the most valuable skill. And the people that have been given everything in life and haven't had to work for it, you can tell straight away. And they fold because whenever a challenge comes or whenever it gets difficult, that's when they quit. And I feel like the ability to push through the difficult times to build a better future is like everything that life's about.
There's two things I say that just before you explain about going back to Australia. I always ask the question, if you had 6 months left to live, what would you change? Because you instantly reflect on the idea of that version of you in 6 months. I only have a 6-month time period. What would I do to enhance the quality of my life? And I always ask that, and people always say things that they could be doing. Oh, I'd stop stressing about work. I'd spend more time with friends and family. I'd eat better. I'd stop smoking. I'd go and explore. It's like, why the fuck does it take the analogy of your life ending to go and do those things when it is such a simple choice? And then the other idea is paying the tax man. You know you have to pay your tax at some point in time. So for instance, we pay the tax man now. We show up, work hard, work on our fitness, eat good food, move our body. So we're stashing that tax away over the course of our life. If we didn't do that, you're still gonna have to pay the tax man at a point in time, whether that's in 20 years and you have diabetes or you have cancer or a body that doesn't work. So yeah, it is that delayed gratification, I think, is the root of any success or any successful person. But to link back around to, what do you do now when you go home? What's the focus in your world?
Yeah, so focus coming home, we've been away for about 6 weeks. And prior to leaving, we sort of put down some really good foundations. So heading back to Bondi will be like spring coming into summer, which we're super excited about. So one of the first things that we're launching into, 18th of August and then 1st of September, we've got our first fortnightly event. They're going to be sort of ticketed wellness events, and the concept is bringing in ice baths and saunas down at the promenade in Bondi. So we've got beautiful Bondi Beach backdrop, bringing in saunas and ice baths, and it's an opportunity to create a community of people and create meaningful social connection without the use of alcohol. That's sort of the whole thesis of the brand. And we took this brand and partnered this brand from LA. It's called Coffee and Chill. We're obviously creating an extension of the brand, which is Coffee and Chill Bondi. They're in LA and Miami at the moment, extending to Austin and New York, and we're going to run the sort of Bondi subsidiary or branch of that. And we're super excited. We've got 3 awesome sponsors coming in over the top. There's Switch Nutrition, which they do a range of supplements. Worked with them in the past as well. They're up in Sunny Coast in Australia. They're a great crew up there as well. We've gone up and met them a couple times. Then there's also Everyday CMOS. They're a CMOS brand. Alessio runs that with his cousin, and it's an awesome brand. They stand for some great stuff, like really slick D2C consumer marketing, but also a great product, and they spent ages in the R&D to get that out. And Bondi Active, which is an activewear brand, obviously based in Bondi. So it's a really great opportunity for us to showcase brands to our audience as well, but also create this environment where everyone's coming in for the same reason. It's going to be on a Sunday from 9 to 11 a.m. We're sort of taking over the cafe. We've got DJs coming in, and it's sort of trying to be like, could we reimagine a space where people could all come together, have a great vibe, enjoy each other's company without being in a bar, without being in a club, without feeling horrible the next day. So that's the vision with it. And yeah, we're like super, super excited. I think the vision for creating meaningful connection without the use of alcohol has been something I've been cultivating for a long time. And to now see it all coming to fruition and build that up and create something that's like a physical manifestation of everything we've put out online is going to be, I think, super gratifying. Talk about that delayed gratification coming in.
Dude, anyone who tunes into my podcast knows my on-brand is whenever I talk about something mindset-based or something I really connect with or relate with, I get a whole head-to-toe just goosebumps. And dude, like hearing you that event sounds so sick. That idea is so sick. The idea of reinventing connection with people without alcohol. Because I used to have so many friendships. You take the substance, so alcohol specifically, away and the friendship crumbles because you bond over something, but you would very rarely take away running or doing fitness or going to the beach or that health space. So that is so sick. I'm so like you guys align to so much of what I think and do, and it's really cool just to see, if you network with the right people, that it's very validating what you think and the principles of how you go about your life. So hearing the way you guys go about things is really cool. What's your long-term goal? So if you were to picture who you want to be or what you want to do in 10 years time, what does that look like?
10 years, wow. I feel like everything's changing so quickly, and I'm sure you can appreciate that as well. When you're building something, it's almost like you're stoking the fire and you're putting, kindling, and you're then putting logs, and the logs get bigger and bigger and you're really building the flame. But then it's like, it sort of turns into a bit of a wildfire, and it's part of running a business. The analogy is like putting out fires, and I think it's important to be like, where is this going, and sort of track that as well. So 10 years is hard. I actually don't have a 10-year plan. I think the biggest thing for me and like a marker of my success would just be growing the message that we're pushing and really taking it global. Like Coffee and Chill, for example, I think has awesome legs to not just be in Bondi. Like Bondi is a great place to launch it. I think it's going to resonate massively with the people that are already there because they're already doing this stuff. There's, conscious community, there's big community events there already, and we're just sort of dialing that up and trying to make an awesome experience that can really captivate what we're about. But I think it can go beyond that as well. I'd love to take it back home to New Zealand. I think that'd be a really cool place where that could resonate, maybe over to Europe as well. So I think there's a level of like, how big can wellness events get? Like, on what sort of stage can we put that? And I think the great thing is like why festivals are so successful is because the feeling of connection people get, because they all go there for the same reason, right? And why can't wellness festivals get to that same level. People are all going with the same intention of self-improvement, and that's what they're going for. And I think if you can create that, it's that fabric of shared belief between lots of people, and that's what makes humans so unique and why we've sort of outlived and I guess in many ways dominate every other species on the planet, is we can create and tell amazing stories, which is the first part of it, but we also believe stories. And I think having those together, Novel Harari talks about this really well in Sapiens and Homo Deus, but it's the idea that I can tell a story of we're all going to show up, there's going to be a DJ, there's going to be ice baths, there's going to be saunas, and everyone's going to have like this amazing community and things, and you can buy into that, and it can give you goosebumps, as you said, and you can envision that and believe that. And that's what allows us to rise and to work together and come together and have that level of conformity. And I think that's like, would be awesome just to scale that up and see how far we could take it. I think at a personal level, I still want to be, I'm sure I'll still be training just as hard. I think there's a level maybe where, you know, as I have a family and maybe want to close off parts of my life to the whole world, I will. But for now, I'm pretty happy it being open. I feel like no skeletons to hide, so it's like an open book, and I enjoy all of the benefits of having people look in and interacting with people like yourself. You know, this conversation never would have happened if I didn't post back in September last year.
So very, very true. So I obviously respect your time. I have two things I just want to leave this episode on. Who do you draw the most inspiration from? Do you have mentors or people you inspire to be like, or do you just have intellects that you admire what they do?
I think I draw the most inspiration from my parents, actually. I think they instilled they gave us an incredible life. I feel like if I was to give even half the life that I had to my children, I would be feeling pretty accomplished with what I'm doing. I think always there's an element for the right or wrong. Like, it sometimes can be like, I want to show them up, or it can be like, I respect them so much that I want to show them. But I feel like our parents are so fundamental and nearly all of our decision making. Whether you resent them or you love them, I think they influence the way that we engage in the world, because they're our teachers. You know, they're the people that brought us into this world, raised us, and taught us all of our beliefs. Whether you agree with those beliefs, whether you're re-envisioning those beliefs now, it's like they are the first teachers and the first people that speak to you and assimilate you in many cases. Or if it's not your parents, it's someone else who steps in and takes a pivotal role there. So I think for them, that's definitely like a huge inspiration, is just to make them proud, which I think they are, for sure.
Fair enough, man.
And I think like building, I think that's one, as like an inspiration level. I think there's other people that I would look up to and respect, but more in the expertise of, I respect someone for like their business sense, or the way they create content, or the way they do a specific action. But I feel like it's very hard to draw that level of aspiration and inspiration from people that you don't actually get to meet.
Yeah.
So that's probably where it's sitting.
So then, to finish off the episode into that camera, for my audience, what is one piece of advice, a different thought, or something that you want my listeners to question themselves on a little bit more? How would you leave this episode?
I think I love Alex Hormozi's comment on we're all going to be dead in 100 years. And anyone who is holding you back because you're worried about what they think or how they perceive you is also going to be dead in 100 years. And we have this like absolute blip on Earth in the timescale of another blip from the extension of like the whole time Earth has been around. So it's like you have such a short amount of time in life, and to be held back because you're worried about being judged or what people think about you is such a limiting belief. And it's, everyone will always laugh at the start. When I posted, no followers, started with 0, I'm sure there are people laughing. Even friends, you know, they take the piss, they go, oh yeah, Alfiegetshard, sick. You know, there's always gonna be that. But first they laugh and then they ask how. Like, once you get past that point, of not taking into account what everyone thinks, or if you're doing the right thing, or if you're trying to fit in. Like, why are you trying to fit in? If the people around you and the people you're trying to fit in with aren't the people you want to be like, just be different and accept that being different does make you stand out, and being different will raise eyebrows, and people may, judge or throw some cast of shame, but ultimately, like, it's your life. Just go live it.
Alfiegetshard, everybody. That was, such a well-articulated way to finish off some definitely interesting comments and conversations, but there is so much alignment in those doing well or those that want others to do well, the connection in what they say. So what you said then, there's so much, that I resonate with, or that I hear other individuals basically just saying go for it, because you do have, one life. So I'm going to link Alfie's Instagram and socials down in the description. Of course, his personal and then his business and programming. Dude, I appreciate you coming on so much.
Absolute pleasure, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, sick.